Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to discover that hidden within ancient biblical texts, scholars have found the exact date when our world will end. Picture the moment when cutting-edge AI technology decodes mysterious prophetic numbers that have puzzled humanity for thousands of years. What if every sign, every warning, every ancient vision suddenly clicked into place like pieces of a cosmic puzzle, revealing that time itself is running out? Have you ever wondered what would happen if prophecy stopped being a mystery and became a countdown? Welcome to our channel, where we explore forbidden questions and hidden truths of history, religion, and the unknown. If you love journeys that challenge what you thought you knew, make sure to join us, because today's story may change the way you see everything. Tonight, we step into a world where ancient warnings become modern reality, where prophecies written in dusty scrolls suddenly pulse with urgent life, and where humanity faces its greatest revelation yet. Chapter 1: The Ancient Warnings. Long before our modern world existed, ancient prophets received visions that would make your blood run cold. These weren't ordinary dreams or wishful thinking. These were detailed, terrifying glimpses into humanity's final chapter, written with such precision that they still send shivers down the spines of believers today. Daniel, a young Hebrew captive in Babylon, trembled as angelic beings showed him the future. His hands shook as he wrote down mathematical formulas that predicted exactly when world empires would rise and fall. The angel told him these visions were sealed until the time of the end, when knowledge would increase and people would travel everywhere across the earth. Ezekiel saw a valley filled with countless dry bones that suddenly came to life, representing a massive resurrection of an entire nation. The vision was so real, so vivid, that he could hear the rattling sound as bone connected to bone and flesh appeared on the skeletal remains. On the Mount of Olives, Jesus himself painted a picture of the last days that sounds like headlines from our morning news. Wars everywhere, earthquakes in strange places, diseases spreading across the globe, and signs in the heavens that would make people faint with fear. But perhaps most mysterious of all was John's vision on the island of Patmos. Exiled and alone, this elderly apostle received the most detailed revelation ever given about the end of time. He saw scrolls with 7 seals, each one unleashing judgments upon the earth. He witnessed horses of different colors bringing conquest, war, famine, and death. He watched as stars fell from heaven and the sun became black as sackcloth. These weren't symbolic stories or metaphors. These ancient seers insisted they were seeing real events that would actually happen. And the most chilling part, every single word they wrote thousands of years ago has remained exactly the same, preserved through wars, persecution, and the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Chapter 2: Signs in the Heavens. The ancient prophets didn't just predict earthly events. They looked up at the stars and saw cosmic disasters that would announce the approaching end. Blood moons, falling stars, the sun growing dark. These weren't random predictions. They were specific, detailed descriptions of celestial events that modern astronomy is now making possible to track and verify. Joel the prophet wrote about the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. For centuries, people wondered what this could possibly mean. Now we know. Blood moons happen during lunar eclipses, and they've been appearing in precise patterns that align perfectly with Jewish festivals. Between 2014 and 2015, 4 blood moons appeared on exact Jewish holy days, Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles. Astronomers call this a tetrad, and it's incredibly rare. What makes it even more amazing is that every time this has happened in history, something major occurred with the Jewish people. The last time was in 1967, when Israel recaptured Jerusalem during the Six-Day War. But blood moons are just the beginning. Jesus said there would be signs in the sun, moon, and stars that would cause people's hearts to fail from fear. NASA has confirmed that our solar system is entering a period of increased cosmic activity. Solar flares are becoming more intense, potentially powerful enough to knock out electrical grids worldwide. Astronomers are tracking thousands of asteroids that could impact Earth, fulfilling ancient predictions about mountains burning with fire falling into the sea. The revelation describes something that sounds exactly like asteroid impacts. Massive objects crashing into the oceans, poisoning water supplies, and blocking out sunlight with debris clouds. Even more stunning is how John described the whole world watching certain events happen at the same time. For thousands of years, this seemed impossible. How could everyone on Earth witness the same event simultaneously? Now we have satellites, television, and internet streaming that make this prediction not just possible, but ordinary. The heavens are speaking the same language that ancient prophets heard thousands of years ago, and modern science is accidentally confirming every word they wrote. Chapter 3: The Revelation Discovery. Imagine archaeologists working in a hidden cave near the Dead Sea when their metal detectors start beeping wildly. Deep beneath centuries of dust and debris, they uncover sealed containers holding scrolls that have been hidden for 2,000 years. As expert translators begin decoding the ancient Hebrew text, they discover something that changes everything: exact dates for the end of the world. Or picture this: advanced artificial intelligence programs designed to find patterns in massive amounts of data are fed every prophetic text ever written. After analyzing millions of calculations involving biblical numbers, Hebrew calendars, and astronomical events, the computer produces a result that makes even skeptical scientists gasp. All the ancient prophecies point to the same time period, and it's much sooner than anyone expected. What if, hidden within the mysterious numerical codes of Daniel's prophecy, someone finally cracked the mathematical formula that reveals when the countdown to the end times actually began? Daniel wrote about weeks of years, 70 periods of 7, and specific time measurements that scholars have debated for centuries. But what if the key to understanding these numbers was always there, waiting for the right technology or discovery to unlock it? Consider the possibility that secret Vatican archives contain prophecies that were deemed too dangerous for public knowledge. Ancient manuscripts from the earliest church fathers, describing visions of the end times with details so specific and terrifying that church leaders decided humanity wasn't ready to know. But what if these hidden documents are now being revealed? The moment this discovery becomes public, everything changes. Social media explodes with the news spreading faster than any government can control. Religious leaders around the world scramble to verify the findings while trying to maintain calm among their congregations. Scientists demand access to the evidence, while politicians call emergency sessions to discuss how to handle the global panic that's beginning to unfold. This isn't just another archaeological find or scientific breakthrough. This is the moment when prophecy stops being about faith and becomes about facts. when ancient warnings transform into modern deadlines, when humanity finally learns exactly how much time is left. Chapter 4: The Global Awakening. The news breaks simultaneously across every continent as morning shows, news networks, and social media platforms struggle to report the impossible. Biblical prophecy has revealed the end date of human civilization. Within hours, the entire world knows that ancient predictions have been decoded and time is running out. Churches that were nearly empty the day before suddenly overflow with desperate crowds seeking answers and salvation. People who never opened a Bible in their lives are frantically searching for prophetic passages, trying to understand what's coming and how to prepare. Pastors work around the clock, holding continuous services as thousands of new believers pour through their doors. But the response isn't uniform across the globe. In some regions, crime rates skyrocket as people decide that if the world is ending soon, nothing matters anymore. Looting breaks out in major cities as people grab whatever they can. Others abandon their jobs, drain their bank accounts, and spend everything on final experiences with their families. Yet, in other places, something beautiful happens. Crime rates plummet as people suddenly realize their actions have eternal consequences. Families that haven't spoken in years reach out to reconcile. Hospitals report an increase in organ donors as people desperately try to do good works before time runs out. Stock markets crash worldwide as investors realize that money and material wealth mean nothing if the world is about to end. Gold and cryptocurrency values fluctuate wildly as people try to figure out what will have value in the final days. Some companies see their stock prices soar, particularly those involved in emergency supplies and survival equipment. The internet becomes flooded with prophetic analysis as millions of people try to understand exactly what the ancient predictions say will happen. Religious websites crash from traffic overload. Bible sales break every record in publishing history. Smartphone apps dedicated to biblical prophecy become the most downloaded programs in human history. World leaders call emergency sessions at the United Nations, trying to maintain global stability as the news continues to spread. Some governments attempt to suppress the information, claiming it's false or misinterpreted, while others openly acknowledge the findings and begin preparing their nations for whatever comes next. Chapter 5: The Countdown begins. With the prophetic timeline now public knowledge, humanity enters a phase of existence never experienced before, living with a known expiration date. Digital countdown clocks appear everywhere, from news websites to smartphone apps, marking the days, hours, and minutes until the predicted end times events begin. The global economy transforms overnight as traditional long-term planning becomes meaningless. Why save for retirement when retirement might never come? Why take out 30-year mortgages when the world might not last 30 more months? Banks struggle to maintain normal operations as people withdraw life savings and demand access to funds that were locked away for the future. Educational systems face unprecedented challenges as students question why they should continue studying for careers they might never have. Universities report massive enrollment drops in long-term degree programs, while short-term religious studies courses see waiting lists stretching for months. Airlines experience the busiest period in aviation history as millions of people race to reconnect with distant family members and visit places they always wanted to see. But they also face the strangest passenger behavior ever recorded, people buying one-way tickets to Jerusalem, trying to reach what they believe will be the safest place during the end times. Marriages increase dramatically as couples decide not to wait for perfect timing that might never come. But divorce rates also spike as people realize they don't want to spend their final years in unhappy relationships. Adoption agencies are overwhelmed with applications from people who suddenly feel desperate to provide loving homes for children before the world changes forever. Religious pilgrimages to biblical sites create the largest mass migration in human history. Jerusalem's population swells beyond capacity as believers from every nation arrive, hoping to be in the Holy Land when prophecy reaches its climax. Israel's government struggles to manage the millions of visitors while maintaining security and basic services. Scientists work frantically to either prove or disprove the prophetic claims, but their research takes on new urgency. Government funding pours into programs that might help humanity survive whatever disasters the prophecies predict. Space agencies receive massive budget increases as world leaders consider whether evacuating Earth might be possible. The countdown continues, marking time in a way that transforms every sunrise into a reminder that history itself is approaching its final chapter. Chapter 6: Ancient Israel Reborn. The most stunning prophetic fulfillment began on May 14, 1948, when something happened that historians called impossible. The nation of Israel came back to life after nearly 2,000 years. Jesus himself had predicted this moment when he told the parable of the fig tree, saying that when Israel budded again, people would know that the end times were near. For centuries, the idea seemed like fantasy. How could a people scattered across the entire world, speaking different languages and living in different cultures, possibly return to form their ancient nation again? The land was occupied by others, controlled by foreign empires, and most Jews had never even seen the territory their ancestors once called home. But World War II changed everything. The Holocaust created global sympathy for Jewish suffering and recognition that Jews needed their own homeland for protection. In a single day, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine and create a Jewish state. Within hours of the announcement, armies from 5 Arab nations attacked, determined to destroy Israel before it could truly begin. Military experts predicted Israel would be wiped out within days. The new nation had no real army, limited weapons, and was vastly outnumbered by professional military forces. But something extraordinary happened. Israel not only survived, but won decisively, capturing more territory than the UN had originally given them. This pattern repeated itself in 1967 during the Six-Day War, when Israel faced another coalition of Arab armies that seemed certain to achieve victory. Instead, Israeli forces captured Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights in less than a week. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, Jews controlled Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. The prophet Ezekiel had written about dry bones coming back to life, representing the restoration of Israel as a nation. Isaiah predicted that Israel would be born in a single day. Jeremiah wrote about Jews returning from every corner of the earth to their ancient homeland. These prophecies seemed symbolic or metaphorical until 1948 made them literal reality. Even more amazing is how modern Israel matches ancient biblical descriptions of the land's borders and boundaries. Archaeological discoveries continue confirming biblical accounts of ancient Israeli cities and settlements. The Hebrew language, dead for everyday use for centuries, became a living language again. The rebirth of Israel started the prophetic countdown clock, and every major event since then has aligned perfectly with biblical predictions about what would happen once the fig tree began to blossom again. Chapter 7. The Temple Mount Mystery. At the heart of Jerusalem sits the most controversial piece of real estate on earth, the Temple Mount. This small plateau holds the key to some of the most explosive prophecies about the end times, and it's currently occupied by two of Islam's holiest sites, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Biblical prophecy indicates that a third Jewish temple must be built on this exact location for end times events to unfold completely. The problem is obvious. Building a Jewish temple would require removing or relocating Islamic holy sites, potentially triggering a global religious war that could fulfill other biblical predictions about massive Middle Eastern conflicts. But behind the scenes, preparations for temple construction are already underway. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has spent decades researching and creating all the sacred vessels, priestly garments, and ritual items needed for temple service. They've trained priests, studied ancient construction techniques, and even prepared detailed architectural plans. The most mysterious development involves red heifers, special cows that biblical law requires for temple purification ceremonies. For nearly 2,000 years, no red heifers met the strict biblical requirements. Recently, several candidates have been born and are being carefully monitored to see if they remain qualified according to ancient standards. Archaeological discoveries beneath the Temple Mount continue revealing evidence of the original Jewish temples, including possible locations of the Holy of Holies and other sacred areas. Ground-penetrating radar and other modern technologies are mapping structures that haven't been seen since Roman armies destroyed the Second Temple in 70 AD. Political discussions about temple construction happen in secret, involving world leaders who understand the explosive implications. Some proposed solutions include building the temple alongside existing Islamic structures or relocating the mosque to another site with international agreement and compensation. The prophecy creates a seemingly impossible situation that nevertheless moves closer to reality each year. Technology makes construction faster and more precise than ever before. International politics continue shifting in ways that could make temple building possible. Most importantly, the desire among many Jews to restore temple worship grows stronger as other prophecies continue fulfilling around them. When the third temple finally rises on the Temple Mount, biblical prophecy indicates that the most dramatic and final period of end times events will begin. Every decision made about this 35-acre plot of land carries consequences that could literally reshape human history. Chapter 8. Technology fulfills ancient visions. The most mind-blowing aspect of biblical prophecy is how ancient writers describe technologies that wouldn't be invented for thousands of years. They saw airplanes, satellites, nuclear weapons, and global communication networks with perfect accuracy, even though they had no words to describe what they were witnessing. The prophet Ezekiel describes strange creatures with wheels within wheels, covered with eyes all around, that could move instantly in any direction. Modern UFO researchers debate whether he saw spacecraft, but the description also perfectly matches satellites orbiting Earth. Circular objects covered with sensors that can observe everything below and communicate across vast distances instantly. John's vision in Revelation describes the whole world watching certain events happen simultaneously. For thousands of years, this seemed impossible. How could everyone on Earth witness the same event at the same time? Television, internet streaming, and social media have made this prediction not just possible, but ordinary. Major events are now watched by billions of people in real time. The famous Mark of the Beast prophecy describes a system where no one can buy or sell without a special mark on their right hand or forehead. This seemed like science fiction until digital currencies, biometric identification, and implantable microchips became reality. Sweden is already moving toward a cashless society where people use implanted chips for all transactions. Daniel predicted that in the last days, knowledge would increase dramatically and people would travel rapidly everywhere. Both predictions describe our modern world perfectly. Human knowledge now doubles every few years instead of every century. Air travel has made it possible to reach any location on Earth within hours. The biblical description of end times deception mentions signs and wonders so convincing that even faithful believers might be fooled. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and deepfake technology can now create completely convincing false realities that are impossible to distinguish from truth. Nuclear weapons fulfill multiple biblical prophecies about divine fire falling from heaven, mountains burning and falling into the sea, and weapons that can destroy entire armies instantly. The radiation effects match ancient descriptions of plagues that cause people's flesh to rot while they're still standing. Revelation describes something that sounds exactly like modern banking and economic systems. Global networks that can instantly stop someone from participating in commerce anywhere in the world. Credit cards, digital banking, and electronic payment systems make the prophetic economic control mechanisms not just possible, but already operational. Ancient prophets saw our world with stunning accuracy, proving that their supernatural visions were real glimpses into humanity's technological future. Chapter 9: Wars and Rumors of Wars. Jesus warned that the end times would be characterized by constant warfare and global instability, a perfect description of our modern world. But these aren't just random conflicts. Biblical prophecy describes specific military alliances and battle locations that are forming exactly as predicted thousands of years ago. Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 describe a massive invasion of Israel led by a ruler from the land of Magog in the far north, accompanied by Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. Historical and archaeological evidence indicates that Magog refers to the region we now call Russia. Persia is modern-day Iran. The alliance described in this ancient prophecy is forming right now as Russia and Iran strengthen their military cooperation and mutual defense agreements. This prophetic war will be unlike any conflict in human history. Ezekiel describes weapons burning for 7 years after the battle and burial operations lasting 7 months. These details suggest nuclear warfare and radiation cleanup, concepts that would have been impossible for ancient people to understand or describe in their own vocabulary. The prophet Joel describes armies so vast that they darken the sky like clouds of locusts. Modern military analysts note that China's People's Liberation Army numbers over 2 million active personnel, the largest military force in human history. The Bible describes Eastern armies crossing dried-up rivers to reach the Battle of Armageddon, and China has been building military infrastructure across Asia that could support exactly such a massive troop movement. But warfare has evolved beyond traditional armies. Cyber attacks can now cripple entire nations without firing a single shot. fulfilling prophecies about enemies having power to shut down cities and control populations through unseen forces. The Stuxnet virus proved that computer code can destroy physical infrastructure, making biblical descriptions of mysterious plagues and sudden technological failures perfectly realistic. Terrorism creates the exact conditions Jesus predicted. People living in constant fear, not knowing when or where the next attack might come. Global communication means that every conflict, every threat, every rumor of war spreads instantly worldwide, creating the atmosphere of perpetual anxiety that biblical prophecy says will characterize the last days. Nuclear weapons represent the ultimate fulfillment of ancient predictions about fire falling from heaven and entire armies being destroyed instantly. The prophet Zechariah described flesh rotting off people's bones while they're still standing, an exact description of radiation poisoning that wouldn't be understood until the atomic age. Modern military technology has given humanity the exact tools needed to fulfill even the most terrifying biblical judgments, making ancient warfare prophecies not just possible, but inevitable. Chapter 10: The Exponential Convergence. For the first time in human history, biblical prophecies that took centuries to develop are now happening simultaneously at an accelerating pace. What ancient prophets saw as distant future events are converging in our generation, like pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place all at once. The prophet Daniel was told that in the last days, people would travel rapidly everywhere and knowledge would increase dramatically. Both predictions describe exponential changes that define our modern era. Air travel has made global transportation routine. The internet has made all human knowledge instantly accessible to anyone with a smartphone. These aren't gradual developments. They represent sudden, revolutionary changes that happened within a single generation. Natural disasters are increasing in both frequency and intensity, matching biblical predictions about earthquakes, storms, and environmental destruction in the last days. Climate data shows that extreme weather events are happening more often and causing more damage than at any time in recorded history. Volcanic activity, seismic events, and massive wildfires create exactly the conditions that ancient prophets described. Israel's existence as a nation enables all end times prophecies to activate simultaneously. For nearly 2,000 years, most biblical prophecies couldn't be fulfilled because they required Israel to exist as an independent nation. The moment Israel was reborn in 1948, dozens of prophetic countdown clocks started ticking at the same time. Global communication networks make it possible for the whole world to witness prophetic events as they happen. Ancient prophecies that seemed impossible, like everyone on Earth seeing the same events simultaneously, became reality with the invention of television, satellites, and internet streaming. Technology is advancing so rapidly that multiple prophetic scenarios are becoming possible within the same generation. Digital currencies, biometric identification, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and global surveillance systems are all developing simultaneously, creating the exact technological infrastructure that biblical prophecy describes for the end times. Geopolitical alliances are forming that match ancient prophetic predictions with stunning precision. Russia and Iran are strengthening military cooperation. European nations are moving toward greater political union. Israel is surrounded by hostile neighbors while maintaining military superiority through advanced technology, exactly as multiple biblical prophets predicted. The acceleration is becoming exponential. Changes that once took decades now happen in years. Developments that once seemed centuries away are now visible on the horizon. Multiple prophetic signs that never appeared together throughout history are now converging simultaneously, suggesting that the prophetic timeline is compressing toward a climactic fulfillment that could happen within our lifetimes. Chapter 11: The Lost Prophecies Debate. Hidden throughout history are controversial texts that some scholars claim contain additional revelations about the end times, writings that were excluded from the biblical canon or suppressed by religious authorities who deemed them too dangerous for public knowledge. These forbidden books offer alternative perspectives on humanity's final chapter that challenge everything we thought we understood about prophetic timeline and events. The Book of Enoch, quoted by the Apostle Jude and referenced by early church fathers, contains detailed descriptions of end times events that go far beyond anything in canonical scripture. Enoch describes the Watchers, fallen angels who corrupted humanity before Noah's flood, and predicts their final judgment during the last days. The book includes specific details about astronomical signs, angelic warfare, and the resurrection of the dead that many find more comprehensive than biblical prophecy. Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi in Egypt reveal alternative teachings about the end times that were considered heretical by early church leaders. These writings suggest that the apocalypse is not primarily about external events, but about spiritual awakening and the revelation of hidden knowledge that will transform human consciousness. Some Gnostic prophecies describe the end times as a period when secret wisdom will be revealed to help humanity transcend physical existence. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain versions of biblical books that differ significantly from traditional texts, including expanded prophecies and additional end times details that never made it into standard Bibles. The War Scroll describes a 40-year battle between the Sons of Light and Sons of Darkness that includes specific military tactics, spiritual warfare, and divine interventions not found in canonical prophecy. Apocryphal books like 1 Enoch, 2 Esdras, and the Apocalypse of Baruch were widely read and accepted by early Christians, but were eventually excluded from the biblical canon. These texts contain prophecies about the Messiah's reign, the resurrection of the dead, and the final judgment that provide different perspectives on familiar themes while adding completely new prophetic elements. Secret traditions within Jewish mysticism and early Christianity preserved oral prophecies that were never written down or were deliberately hidden from outsiders. Kabbalistic texts describe end-time scenarios involving spiritual dimensions and cosmic forces that mainstream religious interpretation rarely addresses. The controversy continues today as scholars debate whether these alternative prophecies represent authentic divine revelation or human speculation. Some argue that excluding these texts from biblical canon eliminated crucial prophetic information. Others maintain that traditional religious authorities correctly identified dangerous or false teachings that could mislead believers about their eternal destiny. Chapter 12: Cross-Religion Convergence. One of the most startling discoveries about end times prophecy is how similar predictions appear across completely different religious traditions worldwide. From Islam's Day of Judgment to Hinduism's cosmic cycles, ancient peoples across the globe received remarkably parallel visions about humanity's ultimate destiny, suggesting that these prophecies might represent universal spiritual truth rather than culturally specific beliefs. Islamic eschatology describes events that align perfectly with Christian end times prophecy. The Quran and Hadith predict the return of Isa, Jesus, to defeat the Dajjal, Antichrist, and establish God's kingdom on earth. Islamic prophecy describes the Mahdi, a righteous leader who will appear during the last days to restore justice and prepare the way for Jesus' return. The parallels are so precise that many scholars wonder if both traditions receive the same divine revelations. Hindu scriptures describe the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness and moral decay that ends when Kalki Avatar appears to destroy evil and restore righteousness to the world. The characteristics of Kali Yuga match biblical descriptions of the last days with stunning accuracy. Widespread corruption, false religions, natural disasters, and the breakdown of family structures. Hindu prophecies even predict that during this final age, the sacred city of Jerusalem will play a crucial role in world events. Buddhist prophecy describes the appearance of Maitreya Buddha during a period of global chaos and spiritual darkness. According to Buddhist texts, Maitreya will come when Buddhism has nearly disappeared from the world and humanity faces unprecedented suffering. The timing and circumstances match Christian predictions about Christ's return during the tribulation period. Native American prophecies speak of the end of the fifth world and the beginning of a new age of peace. Hopi predictions describe purification by fire, the return of ancient spiritual teachers, and global transformation that will separate those who choose spiritual paths from those who remain attached to material existence. Many of these prophecies specifically mention the role of ancient Middle Eastern lands in final world events. The ancient Mayan calendar pointed to 2012 as a significant transition point, though interpretations vary about what this date actually meant. Some scholars argue that Mayan prophecy describes cyclical rather than linear time, suggesting that what we call end times might be recurring cosmic events that happen at regular intervals throughout history. Even more remarkable is how these different traditions describe similar specific details: supernatural signs in the heavens, global warfare, spiritual deception, natural disasters, and the appearance of both false and authentic spiritual teachers. The consistency suggests either remarkable coincidence or shared access to universal prophetic revelation. These cross-cultural prophecies force difficult questions about the nature of divine revelation and whether truth might be larger and more inclusive than any single religious tradition has understood. Chapter 13: The Vatican's Secret Files. Deep beneath St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican's secret archives contain over 50 miles of shelving, holding documents that span more than 1,000 years of church history. Among these classified materials are alleged prophecies, mystical visions, and supernatural encounters that Vatican officials have deemed too sensitive or dangerous for public knowledge. Revelations about the end times that could shake the foundations of faith worldwide. The most famous secret involves the third secret of Fatima, revealed to 3 Portuguese children by the Virgin Mary in 1917. While the Vatican released what it claimed was the complete text in 2000, many researchers believe crucial portions remain classified. The revealed portion describes a vision of the Pope and other clergy being killed, but witnesses who saw the original text claim it contained specific details about apostasy within the Church, global catastrophe, and exact timing for end times events. Saint Malachi's prophecy of the popes, a 12th century vision listing characteristics of every pope until the end of the world, has accurately described papal reigns for over 800 years. According to this prophecy, Pope Francis is either the final pope or the second to last, after whom comes Peter the Roman, who will feed his flock during the final persecution of the Church and the destruction of Rome. Vatican astronomers operate some of the world's most advanced telescopes, officially for legitimate scientific research. However, some researchers claim these observations are actually monitoring celestial signs that match biblical end times prophecies. The Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope in Arizona has capabilities that far exceed what would be necessary for standard astronomical research, leading to speculation about what they might be watching for in the heavens. Classified correspondence between popes throughout history allegedly contains warnings about end times preparation and secret knowledge about prophetic timing. Pope Pius XII reportedly received visions about global war and persecution of Christians. Pope John XXIII supposedly had supernatural encounters that influenced his decision to convene the Second Vatican Council as preparation for coming tribulation. The Vatican Library contains ancient manuscripts that predate the official formation of biblical canon, including texts that early church fathers considered prophetic but never included in Scripture. Some of these documents allegedly contain detailed descriptions of end times events, including specific dates, locations, and sequences that were deemed too precise and potentially panic-inducing for general circulation. Recent leaks from Vatican insiders suggest that current church leadership is privately preparing for prophetic fulfillment while publicly maintaining traditional positions about unknown timing. Secret meetings allegedly involve discussion of how to maintain church unity and provide spiritual leadership during the chaos that biblical prophecy predicts will characterize the final years of human history. Chapter 14: The Numerical Codes. Biblical prophecy is filled with mysterious numbers that many researchers believe contain hidden mathematical formulas revealing exact timing for end times events. Using advanced computer analysis and ancient Hebrew calendar systems, scholars are discovering numerical patterns in prophetic texts that may unlock the ultimate secret, when the final countdown actually began and when it will reach zero. The prophet Daniel received several time-based prophecies involving specific numerical periods: 1,260 days, 1,290 days, and 1,335 days. These numbers appear multiple times throughout biblical prophecy, suggesting they represent crucial time periods for end times events. Some scholars believe these aren't just symbolic numbers, but actual countdown formulas that can be calculated using ancient Hebrew calendar systems and astronomical events. The famous 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 has been called the mathematical backbone of biblical prophecy. This prediction involves 490 years, 70 weeks of years, from a specific starting point until the Messiah appears and is cut off. Many scholars believe the prophecy was precisely fulfilled by Jesus' crucifixion, but others argue that the final week, 7 years, remains unfulfilled and represents the future tribulation period. Hebrew gematria, the practice of assigning numerical values to letters, reveals hidden mathematical patterns throughout prophetic texts. When biblical names, places, and phrases are converted to their numerical equivalents, researchers have discovered connections and formulas that weren't visible in the original text. Some of these calculations point to specific modern dates when plugged into computer programs designed to analyze massive numerical data sets. The biblical concept of Jubilee years, 50-year cycles of redemption and restoration, creates a prophetic calendar that some researchers use to predict major events in Israel's history and future. The rebirth of Israel in 1948, the recapture of Jerusalem in 1967, and other significant dates align perfectly with Jubilee year calculations, suggesting that God operates according to predetermined mathematical cycles. Astronomical events mentioned in biblical prophecy follow predictable mathematical patterns that can be calculated thousands of years in advance. Blood moon tetrads, solar eclipses, planetary alignments, and other celestial signs occur according to precise orbital mechanics. When these astronomical cycles are compared with biblical chronology and Hebrew calendar systems, some researchers claim they reveal exact timing for prophetic fulfillment. Modern computer analysis has discovered mathematical relationships between seemingly unrelated prophetic passages when their numerical elements are analyzed together. Artificial intelligence programs designed to find patterns in massive data sets have identified numerical sequences and formulas within biblical prophecy that human scholars missed for centuries. The challenge is determining which numerical patterns represent authentic prophetic codes and which are simply coincidental mathematical relationships that appear meaningful but lack genuine prophetic significance. Chapter 15: The Forbidden Interpretations. Throughout church history, certain ways of understanding biblical prophecy have been suppressed, condemned as heretical, or banned by religious authorities because they challenged established power structures or offered radically different perspectives on when and how the end times would unfold. These forbidden interpretations continue to influence prophetic understanding today, often providing insights that mainstream religious institutions prefer to ignore. Preterism teaches that most or all biblical prophecies were fulfilled in the 1st century AD, particularly during the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. This interpretation suggests that the Great Tribulation, the coming of the Son of Man, and other apocalyptic events have already happened, making modern end-time speculation unnecessary. Religious authorities often suppress preterist teaching because it undermines the urgency and control mechanisms that apocalyptic expectations provide over believers. Historicist interpretation identifies specific historical events and figures as fulfillments of biblical prophecy, often pointing to religious and political leaders throughout church history as the Antichrist or false prophet. This approach has been dangerous for church-state relationships because it frequently identifies popes, emperors, and other powerful figures as biblical villains. Many historicist interpreters were persecuted or executed for their politically inconvenient prophetic conclusions. Alternative chronology systems challenge traditional dating of biblical events and propose different starting points for prophetic countdown calculations. Some researchers argue that conventional historical dates for events like the destruction of Jerusalem, the rebuilding of the temple, or the birth of Christ are incorrect, making all subsequent prophetic timing calculations worthless. These alternative timelines often produce very different predictions about when end times events should occur. Universalist interpretations suggest that biblical prophecy describes eventual salvation for all humanity rather than eternal damnation for unbelievers. This perspective reads apocalyptic passages as describing purification and restoration rather than permanent judgment. Religious authorities often suppress universalist teaching because it reduces fear-based motivation for religious conversion and commitment. Esoteric interpretations approach biblical prophecy as symbolic descriptions of spiritual development rather than literal predictions about external events. These readings suggest that the end times represent psychological and spiritual transformation within individual consciousness rather than global catastrophe. Mystical and Gnostic traditions have preserved these interpretations despite official religious condemnation. Political interpretations identify modern nations, leaders, and movements as fulfillments of biblical prophecy in ways that create diplomatic problems or threaten international relationships. When scholars identify specific countries as Babylon, Gog and Magog, or other prophetic entities, their interpretations can influence foreign policy and create conflicts between nations whose citizens believe they're fighting prophetic enemies. Some researchers argue that suppressing alternative prophetic interpretations has prevented accurate understanding of biblical prophecy and delayed recognition of authentic prophetic fulfillment happening in unexpected ways. Chapter 16: Digital Prophecy and AI. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing biblical prophecy analysis by discovering patterns, connections, and mathematical relationships that human scholars missed for thousands of years. These technological tools are not only revealing new insights about ancient predictions, but simultaneously fulfilling prophecies about knowledge increasing dramatically in the last days, and deception becoming so sophisticated that even faithful believers might be fooled. Machine learning algorithms trained on biblical texts have identified numerical patterns and linguistic structures that suggest hidden codes within prophetic passages. When fed massive databases containing biblical chronology, historical events, and astronomical data, AI systems have discovered correlations and timing formulas that produce specific date predictions for prophetic fulfillment. Some of these computer-generated calculations align remarkably with traditional prophetic interpretations, while others suggest completely different timelines. Natural language processing programs can now analyze biblical prophecy in original Hebrew and Greek languages with greater precision than human translators, identifying subtle meanings and cross-references that were previously undetectable. These AI systems have discovered that certain prophetic phrases contain multiple layers of meaning that become visible only through computer analysis of word patterns, grammatical structures, and cultural contexts. Blockchain technology and cryptocurrency systems are creating the exact economic infrastructure that biblical prophecy describes for end times global control. Digital currencies eliminate the need for physical money, making it possible to instantly prevent anyone from buying or selling anywhere in the world. Biometric identification systems linked to digital wallets fulfill ancient predictions about marks on hands or foreheads being required for all commercial transactions. Social media algorithms already demonstrate the prophetic prediction about end times deception by creating completely different realities for different users. Artificial intelligence systems can now generate convincing false videos, fake news articles, and simulated social media profiles that are virtually impossible to distinguish from authentic content. This technology fulfills biblical warnings about signs and wonders so convincing that even faithful believers might be deceived. Global surveillance systems powered by AI can now track every person on Earth through facial recognition, location data, and behavioral analysis. Satellite networks, internet monitoring, and smartphone tracking create the comprehensive surveillance infrastructure that biblical prophecy suggests will be used to control populations during the end times. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are approaching the point where they can create completely convincing alternate realities that feel more real than actual physical experience. These systems could fulfill prophetic predictions about powerful delusions that cause people to believe lies and reject truth. The same artificial intelligence systems that are analyzing biblical prophecy could potentially be used to fulfill those prophecies by providing the technological infrastructure for global control, deception, and surveillance that ancient prophets described with remarkable accuracy. Chapter 17: Geopolitical Prophetic Alignments. Current global politics are aligning with biblical prophecy with such precision that it seems like world leaders are following an ancient script written thousands of years ago. From military alliances to economic partnerships, the geopolitical chessboard is being arranged exactly as biblical prophets predicted, creating conditions that make end-time scenarios not just possible, but seemingly inevitable. The Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy describes a massive invasion of Israel led by Gog from the land of Magog, accompanied by Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. Modern geopolitical analysis identifies Magog as the territory occupied by modern Russia, while Persia clearly refers to Iran. Today, Russia and Iran have formed their strongest military alliance in history, conducting joint military exercises, sharing advanced weapons technology, and coordinating Middle Eastern strategy exactly as this ancient prophecy predicted. European integration continues moving toward the type of unified political structure that many scholars believe represents the revived Roman Empire mentioned in biblical prophecy. The European Union has already created shared currency, open borders, and coordinated policies that demonstrate how quickly separate nations can merge into unified political entities. Economic crises and security threats continue pushing European nations toward greater centralization and unified leadership. China's rapidly growing military and economic power positions it perfectly to fulfill biblical prophecies about massive armies from the east crossing dried-up rivers to participate in end-times warfare. China's Belt and Road Initiative is creating the exact infrastructure needed to move millions of troops across Asia toward the Middle East. The Euphrates River, which Revelation says will dry up to prepare the way for Eastern armies, is already at historically low levels due to upstream damming and drought. Israel's position matches biblical prophecy with stunning accuracy. A small nation with advanced military technology, surrounded by hostile neighbors, yet somehow maintaining military superiority against overwhelming odds. Israel's development of advanced missile defense systems, cyber warfare capabilities, and nuclear weapons provides exactly the military advantages that biblical prophecy suggests Israel will possess during end-times conflicts. Global governance movements continue advancing toward the type of unified world authority that biblical prophecy predicts will control the earth during the final years of human history. International organizations, climate change agreements, pandemic response coordination, and economic integration create precedents for the kind of global political control that end-times prophecy describes. The Abraham Accords and other Middle Eastern diplomatic developments are creating exactly the type of peace agreements that biblical prophecy says will be broken during the end times, triggering the final conflicts that lead to Armageddon. These diplomatic breakthroughs demonstrate how quickly Middle Eastern politics can shift and how peace agreements create new opportunities for prophetic fulfillment. Every major geopolitical development seems to move the world closer to the precise conditions that biblical prophecy describes for humanity's final chapter. Chapter 18: The climate connection. Environmental disasters and climate change are creating conditions that match biblical descriptions of end times judgments with frightening accuracy. From unprecedented wildfires to record-breaking floods, our planet seems to be experiencing the exact natural catastrophes that ancient prophets warned would characterize humanity's final years on Earth. Extreme weather events are increasing in both frequency and intensity, matching biblical predictions about natural disasters in the last days. The past decade has produced more billion-dollar weather disasters than any comparable period in recorded history. Hurricane seasons break records regularly, winter storms reach unprecedented intensity, and drought conditions create massive agricultural failures that affect global food supplies. Wildfires now burn with such intensity and cover such vast areas that they create their own weather systems, generating lightning and tornadoes that spread destruction across entire regions. These mega fires match biblical descriptions of mountains burning with fire and vegetation being consumed across large portions of the earth. Smoke from major wildfires can now be detected thousands of miles away, fulfilling ancient predictions about the sky being darkened by smoke and ash. Rising sea levels threaten coastal cities worldwide, potentially fulfilling biblical prophecies about the sea and waves roaring and people's hearts failing them from fear of what's coming upon the earth. Small island nations are already disappearing beneath rising waters, creating the first climate refugees in human history and demonstrating how quickly geographical changes can occur. Volcanic activity appears to be increasing globally, with multiple major eruptions affecting air travel, agriculture, and weather patterns across entire continents. The 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption in Iceland disrupted global air traffic for weeks, demonstrating how single volcanic events can affect worldwide transportation and commerce. Biblical prophecy describes similar disruptions caused by natural disasters during the end times. Massive earthquake activity continues affecting regions worldwide, including areas that historically experienced very little seismic activity. The frequency of major earthquakes has increased significantly in recent decades, matching Jesus' prediction that earthquakes in various places would characterize the last days. Modern construction in earthquake-prone areas creates the potential for catastrophic building collapses, affecting millions of people. Agricultural disruption caused by extreme weather, changing precipitation patterns, and temperature fluctuations is creating food security concerns that could develop into the famines that biblical prophecy predicts for the end times. Crop failures in major agricultural regions can now affect global food prices and availability within months. Perhaps most significantly, these environmental changes are happening simultaneously rather than gradually, creating the type of converging natural disasters that biblical prophecy describes as birth pains, increasing in frequency and intensity as the final day approaches. Chapter 19: The Personal Reckoning. If biblical prophecy truly reveals that the end of time is approaching rapidly, every person on earth faces the most urgent and personal decision in human history. What do these ancient predictions mean for individual souls? And how should each person prepare for what might be humanity's final chapter? The weight of living with a prophetic countdown affects people differently, depending on their spiritual beliefs, life circumstances, and understanding of what comes after death. For believers, the approach of end times events brings both excitement about promised resurrection and anxiety about judgment and eternal destiny. For skeptics, even the possibility that ancient prophecies might be accurate forces uncomfortable questions about spiritual reality and personal accountability. Biblical prophecy makes clear that the end times period will force every person to choose between faith and rejection, between following truth and believing deception. There will be no neutral ground, no option to remain undecided or uninvolved. The approaching culmination of human history demands that each individual take a definitive position about spiritual reality and eternal destiny. The practical implications of believing that time is running out affect every aspect of daily life. Career decisions, relationship choices, financial planning, and life goals all take on different significance when viewed through the lens of potential prophetic fulfillment. How do you plan for retirement when the world might not last that long? How do you raise children when they might face unprecedented global chaos during their lifetimes? Yet biblical prophecy also offers hope and purpose, even in the face of approaching catastrophe. Ancient predictions describe ultimate victory for those who maintain faith despite persecution and deception. The same prophecies that predict global disaster also promise restoration, resurrection, and eternal peace for those who choose correctly during humanity's final test. Personal preparation involves more than just physical survival planning or emergency supplies. Biblical prophecy emphasizes spiritual readiness, developing the kind of faith and character that can withstand whatever deception, persecution, or catastrophe the end times might bring. This preparation includes studying prophetic passages to understand what's coming, building relationships with others who share similar beliefs, and cultivating the spiritual strength needed to maintain hope during dark times. The approaching end of time also creates opportunities for personal meaning and significance that never existed before. Living during the potential fulfillment of ancient prophecies means participating in the most important events in human history. Every decision, every action, every choice about faith and truth carries consequences that extend far beyond individual life into eternal significance. The ultimate question becomes not whether the prophecies are accurate, but whether each person is prepared for the possibility that they might be true. Chapter 20: The Hidden Timeline. But what if everything we think we understand about prophetic timing is just the beginning of an even more mysterious and shocking sequence of events? What if the timeline revealed in ancient texts contains layers of hidden meaning that point to revelations so earth-shattering they would fundamentally change how we understand reality itself? Deep within the numerical codes of biblical prophecy lie patterns that suggest multiple overlapping cycles rather than a single linear timeline leading to one final end. Some researchers have discovered evidence that what we call end times might actually be recurring cosmic events that happen at regular intervals throughout history, cataclysmic periods that reset human civilization and mark transitions between different ages of existence. Ancient texts from cultures worldwide contain similar descriptions of previous world-ending events, followed by new beginnings, suggesting that humanity has experienced multiple apocalyptic cycles. Hindu scriptures describe endless repetitions of creation and destruction. Native American traditions speak of previous worlds that ended in catastrophe before new worlds began. Even biblical texts contain hints about pre-Adamic civilizations and multiple creation events. The most disturbing possibility is that the prophetic timeline we're currently experiencing might not lead to the final end of everything, but to something far more complex and mysterious. What if the approaching fulfillment of biblical prophecy marks humanity's transition into an entirely different type of existence? One that involves dimensions of reality that current human consciousness cannot comprehend. Quantum physics and advanced theoretical science are discovering aspects of reality that seem to match ancient descriptions of spiritual dimensions, parallel worlds, and non-linear time. What ancient prophets described as supernatural events might actually be natural phenomena that operate according to cosmic laws we're only beginning to understand. The most chilling question remains unanswered in all prophetic literature. What happens after the end? Biblical prophecy describes new heavens and new earth, eternal kingdoms, and transformed existence, but provides few details about what these conditions actually involve. The silence around these ultimate questions suggests that the true scope of prophetic fulfillment extends far beyond anything humanity has yet imagined. Perhaps the greatest secret hidden within biblical prophecy is that the end of time as we know it is actually the beginning of something so radically different that ancient prophets could only describe it in symbolic language that concealed more than it revealed. The final countdown might not be leading to an ending at all, but to a transformation so complete that everything we think we know about existence becomes irrelevant. And if that's true, then the real question isn't whether prophecy reveals the end of time soon. It's whether we're prepared for what comes after the end, when time itself becomes something entirely new and unimaginably different. The ancient warnings continue echoing through history, but their ultimate meaning may be far more mysterious and profound than anyone has dared to imagine.